Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining me as we spend the next hour together. As always, I do hope you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family because you matter. My opening observations tonight are on leadership. It was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who stated this about leadership. He said, "We need leaders not in love with money, but in love with justice, not in love with publicity, but in love with humanity." And that is what we must focus on when it comes down to leadership. And so tonight we'll take a break from all the political madness that's going on and we'll focus on servant leadership because united we stand and united we serve. And those are my opening observations. When it comes to service in America and leadership in America, we are all concerned about how we lead and who we serve. Service is often the service that we pay or the rent that we pay to live in this planet. And we should be conscientious about how we do that so that we can effectuate change, not only for ourselves, but for our neighbors and our children's children. So in this segment of United We Serve, what I seek to do is talk about the global citizen, because we're not just Americans. We're not just Black, we're conservative, we're liberal, we're independent, we're Christian, we're Muslim, we're Jewish, we're all faiths, all ethnicities. But when it comes to serving and leadership, it's important that we have the understanding of how we serve to lead as servant leaders because of how it impacts communities. So these conversations that I've been having called United We Serve is to bring in young and older leaders to have their expertise discussed and their impressions of how we should be leading. And certainly we need leadership like never before. So joining me on tonight's special program is Giovanna Hernandez Williams. She is a Panamanian American and a proud Afro-Latina who learned firsthand the necessity of fighting for justice, particularly for those who have been involved in human trafficking. She is an anti-human trafficking activist. She joins us tonight to talk about leadership. We also have Joanna LeBlanc, who is a national security and foreign policy, not only legal analyst, but a lawyer and a commentator, but also a leader in her own right in effectuating change on a global perspective, particularly within the African diaspora. We also have Nicole Lester. Nicole is the executive vice president of Black Ops Production and Distribution. It is a media strategy firm which contributes to new age programming, quality content editing, and diversity in media management, which is very important in terms of making sure that we have media that shows diversity. And then last but not least, we have Keith Gray. Now, Keith is an entrepreneur and 2014 candidate for the Maryland State Delegate here in my home state of Maryland. He has over 18 years of law enforcement, private security, and criminal justice expertise. He's a former professional basketball player in the European League. He's also an entrepreneur at heart, and Keith is currently the co-founder of Blue, am I saying this right, Keith? Blukazi?
Blukazi.
Blukazi.
It's Swahili for blue work.
All right, and is a public service data company and founder of GT5 Equity Partners. I'm so glad that all of these young and vibrant leaders are here in this program to talk about United We Serve. So let me get right to the heart of the matter about leadership, because this is a very fundamental thing that we talk about. It was Dr. King who stated, a genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. Joanna, let me begin with you. What does that statement mean to you? And what should we be doing to become genuine leaders that can mold consensus within our country?
First and foremost, there is a global crisis all over the world. And what this tells me is there is a lack of leadership. When we look at even the COVID-19 crisis here in America, while the United States rather is the most powerful country in the world with enormous resources, yet this country is the most impacted, right? So it tells you the problem is not that we don't have the resources. There is an issue with our leadership. So you cannot lead, and some people may think this is very soft talk, but I do believe in leading with empathy and compassion. Because a leader who does not understand its people, a leader who cannot connect with its people, and a leader who cannot speak the language of all the people within his constituency is bound to fail. We talk about, servant leadership all the time. And to truly serve, you have to be selfless. You have to remove self out of the equation and focus on the needs of the people and not focus on your economic interest and your political interest, but more so doing whatever it takes to ensure the lives of the people that you are serving continue to propel to the next level.
We're coming back with more after this. Gia, you're involved in a very serious situation with human trafficking. You're trying to help save people from human trafficking. We're not just talking about sex trafficking, but human trafficking in terms of labor and modern day slavery. When you hear that statement and you hear how Joanna has explained that there's a crisis of leadership, what's your response to this, and how do you lead on a social justice platform?
Yeah, a genuine leader, in my view, is someone who leads with heart, compassion, but most importantly, with courage. Because there comes a time when you don't have a playbook on how you're going to decide what you have to do. You have to reach deep down inside and say, you know what, this answer or the way that I'm going to provide a solution may not work for everyone. But in leadership, I've grown to learn that there's no right or left, right and wrong sometimes. You just have to do what's best for the general of your people, for the better good. So when I joined the fight to speak up for victims of human trafficking, to be a voice for people who are victimized when it comes to labor and domestic servitude, it's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable subject to talk about, but I felt like I needed a bit of courage to step out and say, hey, listen, my mother made this choice to send me to America for a better opportunity. And with that, it comes with a lot of scrutiny. It comes with a lot of like people putting you in a certain. And those are challenges that I had to work through myself, and understanding that I had those challenges, it helps me be more compassionate towards other people and hearing them out and trying to figure out what is the best way to be a servant leader, someone that have a heart for the real matter, not just because I got this title of director of X, Y, and Z. Who cares about that? It's about rolling up your sleeves and getting the work done. That's a true leader. That's who I will trust. And that's who I will follow. I am not going to follow someone who has not proven themselves and someone who doesn't have a heart to show that they can be compassionate. So that's what I have to say on leadership.
That's Giovanna Hernandez Williams, who goes by Gia. And of course, we're talking to a panel, having a panel discussion called United We Serve. And Gia, I like the fact that you pointed out that it's not about the title that you have, but it's about the service that you give. These are talented leaders. And when we take a break, we're going to come back and continue to talk more about what genuine leadership looks like and how it's important that we have leaders from the top down working on a federal level, a national level, a state level, a local level, and a global level. Back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. So I'm talking to Giovanna Hernandez Williams. We call her Gia, Joanna LeBlanc, Nicole Lester, and Keith Gray. We are talking about United We Serve and why it is so important to have genuine leadership that knows how to mold a consensus rather than having people look up to you because of your title that you've earned. But how do you effectuate change by being a good servant leader on the front lines of a COVID-19 pandemic, in the boardroom strategizing for more diversity, or on the front lines of dealing with child sex trafficking and human trafficking, all the nine, and then national security and foreign policy, and then entrepreneurship and business. So we go now to Nicole Lester to talk about the importance of serving to lead. United we serve, united we lead. Nicole?
Yeah, I mean, so I think in terms of leadership, I think we all have one idea of a leader, and those are the ones that choose themselves to be leaders. They put themselves in front of us and say, hey, I'm a leader. I really do believe that real leaders are purposed, like it's their purpose. And they're also positioned. So it's not happenstance, it is the positioning that's happened over time. So there were leaders when they were born, or they're groomed into leadership in their own right because that's their purpose. And definitely, if you own your actual purpose and you own the positioning, then you're able to step up. Because I'm not just talking about an elected official that says, hey, I'm the best leader, choose me. I'm talking about the one that has been tried and true, has the great character that's just been climbing the ranks, working hard, being an example, writing checks to, charitable organizations, rolling up their sleeves, going in, volunteering in places. We don't consider those people as leaders, but they are. Those leaders that don't stand in front of a platform or in front of a television camera still need to step up. That's what I'm calling for. So the reason why I'm not in politics, because that's my base. My base is politics, pre-law, all that stuff. I got out of politics to actually make some changes in media because that's my ministry. That's my purpose. That's my positioning. I'm best at that, instead of falling in line or getting into the box. I'm not that politician, but I am a person that wants to affect the change and be able to reach out to people and lead in that way. So I just think that wherever people are, whatever their purpose and their positioning is, they need to lead in that space and lead with that light.
And that's understandable because each of you bring to the table of leadership your own particular, bent and how you want to lead and what lane you're walking in. And then we see, as we're going to see throughout this conversation today, that there is some synergy in how all of that comes together. Kind of like what Dr. King was talking about, everybody should bring their talents and skills and hard work and leadership, have it all at the table of brotherhood so that we can find some common good to grow our nation as well as to grow our world to be a more beloved community. To that point, Keith Gray, building a consensus, though, is really part of what a leader does. And certainly you've been doing that most of your life, trying to build a consensus for people and molding the consensus using your influence.
Absolutely. For me, leadership has always been one of those things that the men that I looked up to, growing up in the South, you have the strong wisdom, they leave you with something. I don't care if it's the guy that's the wino on the block, he's going to leave you with some type of knowledge. And it's that type of, I know I may not be a leader to all, but I'm going to impart you with something because they see something in you. And they've, it's always been that way for me. So for me, it's always been about doing. And so because I know that people have people that reared me expect me to do great things. So in that, I've led by doing. And whatever I've thought about in your life, as you can see, my we discussed my bio. It has a lot of different things because whatever I think about, I never ask why. I don't give a damn why. I want to ask how. And it's that approach that I take with everything from running for office. I had no clue about running for office, but I knew when I moved to Prince George's County, I looked around and I didn't like what I saw. So you know what I did? I said, I'm going to run for office. I went to the library. I was working at American University at the time, running their investigations division and also teaching leadership. Since we're on topic of leadership, I was teaching a grad course in leadership at the time. And I went and got a book from the library about politics, and I read up overnight, over the course of a few days, and then found a campaign manager. And that's how I started off. That's how I've done every single thing in life, from real estate to even what I'm doing now. It's being a leader, not so much. I started out with leadership on the empathetic side, being a police officer, young DC police officer, after I finished career in higher education. Then I had a master's degree when I came into the police department. So I had a completely different view of the world. I'd been a manager, done all those things. And now I have to go, subjugate myself to a 26-year-old sergeant that I don't care for, who I consider, that's another story. But these are the things that I had to go through in order to build my leadership, humble myself. So from being a police officer, which was the most trying job I've ever had, but it was also the best job that I've ever had, because it molded my leadership, fine-tuned it to where now I'm 40 years old now. And it's not so much empathy. I always have an understanding. That's why I was a good cop. I was a very good cop. It's because I had that. I closed cases because people could empathize with me. I knew how to talk to them. And like you say, bridging those gaps. You're trying to find, a young lady missing. You try to solve a homicide case, whatever it is you try to do. You have to be able to talk to people, so you have to be able to empathize. So I got very good at that part that I got from my rearing. But now at this point in my life, it's more so I don't accept excuses. It's especially, as a Black man in the world that we live in, it's hard. It is freaking hard. So knowing that, my son, I have a 3-year-old son, I have a 22-year-old son, I have parts of my daughters as well, 3 daughters, I have 5 kids, about total, ranging from 3 to 22. And my son, he's on his own path. My daughter's on their own path. I'm their advisor. It's you do. I'm not going to lead you. I'm not going to save you unless you're at that bottom, and then I'll get you out. So I even do that with my kids. So my form of leadership is more the hard nose. I've entered realms where the people that I'm doing business with, and being in business over the last few years, you have to be cutthroat to a certain extent. You have to be as bad. You're in the jungle. So you have to be an animal like everyone else in that business environment, else guess what, you're going to falter. So that's coming from law enforcement, where I was completely empathetic, and then entering a realm of business has fine-tuned me now to where leadership is what it's always been for me, which is do. That's it, do. I don't want to talk about this, just do it. And to now what it is, it's like I said, we all have it within me. My dad left when I was 7. I don't make, I thank God my mom left him, actually. I don't make those excuses for now for what I do, what affects my life. I've never made those excuses. I've always found a way. I've always sought men out, like Dr. Will Jolly we told you about, just men that I saw that I wanted to be like. And that's what that's leadership to me. Finding those who, if you don't know how to be a leader, and this is, for young folks watching this, if you don't know what leadership is, if you don't see people around you, you have YouTube. You have all this technology in the palm of your hand. You watch a bunch of videos all day. Your leaders could be right there in the palm of your hands every single day. Just commit yourself to somebody that's spreading a good word, and you form your own set of leadership. And that's what we need more of, is us having these types of conversations about leadership, showing other young folks how to be leaders, and not so much just having the conversation, and just imparting that on every youngster that we come into contact with.
We'll be back with more after the break. The one thing that I've learned, panelists, Giovanna, Joanna, Nicole, and Keith, the one thing that I've learned over life is that education doesn't always revolve around our schooling and educating our minds. There's an extension of that, so that it's mind, body, and spirit, so that we're able to use our head, understand and empathize with our hearts, and then use our hands to bring about change. Let me bring it back to you, Joanna. What does that mean to you?
I believe in formal education as well as informal education, because the idea is that when you're educated, you're able to make better decisions when it comes to who you vote for, when it comes to your health, when it comes to your finances, when it comes to even how to raise your children, because education tends to transform the mind for most of us. Now, some of us, we still have a little loose screw, but for most of us, education tends to reframe the way we address the world and how we conduct ourselves in society. So while the cost of education in this country is enormous, and I think that it is something that the next administration should address, the student loan crisis. It is indeed a crisis in the Black community in particular, because for most of us, they have told us, if you want a better future, focus on education. And Black women in particular, we have taken the lead on education. Black women in this country are some of the most educated people in this country, but yet the least paid. So that needs to change, because we've done our part. We've done what society told us to do. So now society has to come through for us in terms of having some form of education reform, in particular when it comes to the student loan crisis. But you're right, Kelly. Education, it is paramount to any given society. And I say in particular, you educate a woman, you educate an entire society.
It's been proven that that's the case, because a lot of times when you do studies of impoverished areas, many people who are trying to help that community get up on the good foot will actually go through the woman who, unlike the husband, will make sure that the rest of the family or the rest of the clan is educated, or at least exposed to the elements of success, and then the husband comes along to actually marry into that philosophy as well. So to your point, there's a lot of studies to validate what you just said. Nicole, education, how vital is it?
In terms of formal education, I think we all agree, and we're all on that path. Most of us that see a certain level of success, we think that going to college and getting the degrees, that helps us. But I think another form of education we need to focus on is mentorship. Mentoring up and mentoring down, not just I'm older than you, I tell you, I should guide you. I think we can learn a lot from millennials and then Gen Xers, Gen Zers, and all these other people because they have passion, they have courage, the courage and passion that we may not have ever had. And they have intellect and knowledge. They have access to knowledge and they use it like fearlessly. So I just really feel like we need to focus on learning from some of the young people because they have those attributes, but also be in position ourselves to actually mentor and be in position to pull someone up. Because it's like, yeah, you have formal education, but if you don't know how to apply it in the workplace and in the real world, it doesn't help you any. Like my grandmother says, sometimes you need that common sense. And I think that's what older people typically bring to the table, some of this common sense. So really, like I said, mentorship works that, both ways. And that is a vital form of education because you can get that textbook all day long. But if you don't have someone that's actually coaching and guiding and honing that education, sometimes you don't reach the level of success and you don't achieve the goal.
My greatest mother, my mother was my greatest mentor, I should say. And she always taught me that you got to have book smarts and you've got to have street sense. So that meant that mentoring can actually cause that to happen, because when you're mentoring with someone younger than you or someone who thinks differently than you, that just kind of brings it all together. When we return, we'll continue to talk about the power of education. Before I leave you to go to the break, Nelson Mandela said education is the gateway out of poverty. We'll discuss that and more when we return. Welcome back to the program, talking to a great panel of leaders, young leaders who are vibrant and they understand the value of serving their communities and trying to enlighten us and educate us. And we're talking about education because a leader's education is very important. But as we've discussed, it's not just about what you learn in the books. It's not just about the titles that you keep. But Gia, it's also about being able to mentor people. And certainly when it comes to mentoring, you are definitely in a space with the anti-human trafficking activism that you're engaged in, of mentoring people who are coming out of a very dire situation. Tell me about the value of education there.
So the value of education for me, means education has given me status, it's given me financial security, it's given me an independent mind, and it has given me insight on how to help educate or help not just mentor, but if I can have the time to have the willingness to even be in a position to sponsor someone else who wants education. So I have participated in a number of conferences going back to Panama and just speaking to the youth and the community and women, just sharing with them that coming to America does not mean that the problem is going to be automatically solved. Or I've even heard people from America say, "I'm tired of what's going on here in politics. I'm going to another country. Maybe I'll come with you, Gia, to Panama." And just like Joanna said, there are still issues in other countries. For example, the reason why I came here is because um, the color of my mother's skin, it was hard for her to even get a job mopping someone's floor. And that in countries like that, they will say, oh, we don't have issues with racism here. It's more about class. But when you look back and you see those people that don't have jobs, there are people that look like me.
So Keith, coming in with this now, you're someone who's been there on the front lines as a police officer, you're an entrepreneur, you're a former basketball player on a professional level, you're a business owner. You are dealing with a lot of people who are looking up to you. How do you use that to realize that you can incentivize young people to get an education and to aspire to greatness?
The first thing that I do is I make sure that they understand the difference between a formal education and, a general education, and an education that is going to make you a living, right? And we don't, as Black folks, we've been sold what I don't want to call it a bag of tricks. Even though I do have a graduate degree, I have, a couple of classes into my PhD. I was going to go the route. I wanted to be a university professor. So that's why I ended up getting a graduate degree specifically in higher ed administration, because I wanted to be able to impact Black lives on the higher education level. So, I'm a unique person to talk to about, because I know the insides and outsides of a university from the top down, auxiliary services to the president's office. I understand how a university works, the basic nuts and bolts. So having that understanding and having worked in different environments, be it an online environment, I worked at University of Phoenix, I worked with another university as a consultant, and then having worked in brick and mortar institutions, I understand this. So the business of education is what I'm talking about now. And one thing that I never ever want a new generation of kids to do is to take on debt when they can't pay it back. And being at a university, even like South Florida, I saw tuition go from in-state tuition go from $6,000 a year up to like $15,000 a year, because they wanted to be a top 60 research institution. 40,000 students at the time when I worked there, and all this basically it reverberated on other universities, FAMU, all the other universities at the time that did have large counts of Black students. So seeing the disparities just on that level of what these students, because they wanted to do that to focus, because they were getting a grant. They were getting money from the state, and they wanted to focus on the research portion in order to get that extra money. Whereas HBCU at FAMU over here, Nicole's alma mater, they were left in the dust. And seeing those disparities and seeing those things going on at that level, and knowing that, I always make sure kids understand college is not for everybody. Our students especially cannot rely on the formal education system. This is what we have to teach, what I'm talking about. I worked in it, I know it. Teach your kids. You listening to me, if you hear me, you get them involved in some type of community college, education-based program, financial entrepreneurship-based program. They're gonna get a net. Once they learn the business the underlying tenets of business, and they have an interest, they'll learn how to make money from it. You can make this million ways you can make money today. And these are the things that we have to start talking about, going back to that education that, number one, teaches us as Black folks in this country how to be entrepreneurs again. This is what we used to do. Our neighborhoods were consisted of doctors, lawyers, teachers, everybody that we needed was right there in our community.
We're coming back with more after this. Everything that's been said so far echoes one thing: we have to educate ourselves. But also serving as leaders, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?
I feel like we all have fallen short of God's glory, and therefore there is room for people to just take a pause and look back and realize that you're not perfect yourself. And if someone is coming to the table and saying, listen, I made a mistake and this is how I'm trying to make it right. And along the way, these are the things that I have done consistently to show that I have tried to improve myself as a person, a better human being, then stop and just listen. There's no need for you to be looking at social media and seeing what other people are saying. Just stop, get the facts, and analyze for yourself. That's what education does. When you stop, you don't have to go to school. You can take a book and you can start becoming more of a better critical thinker. And you don't have people in these media feeding you things in your head, and then you come up with these random conclusions and decisions. I tend to like that type of and viewpoint. So I will always push for people and young people to continue to grow your mind and learn as much as you can and become that independent thinker.
Very good. Thank you, Gia. Keith, what's your most persistent act of doing for others?
With me, it's at this point now, I'm just reaching, just basically kind of reinvented. I love being an advisor. I was actually my first job after playing basketball. I applied to the University of South Florida right after I came back from the DR, and ended up getting a job as an academic advisor in the Department of Biology. Mind you, I hadn't taken a science class since out of high school. But it's, it was just relating to the students. I was, in my mid-20s, and I looked like the students, so I could advise them well. So that's started what I'm now doing now. I'm launching through social media, through my own YouTube page, the Induna. So that is basically the advisor. It's it's a term, a South African term, that it basically, again, it makes me the advisor, the ombudsman. But what I'd like to do is to introduce young men, because you got to think about the times that we're in right now. You have pre-COVID and you have post-COVID, right? And when you're going into this environment, a new economic environment, a new economy where nobody knows what the heck to do. I mean, just from a health standpoint, we're talking about businesses getting back on their feet. All of these things are going to take. This is a new economy, and this is what people have to understand. This is literally something that. Cruise ships are scrapping their ships that I rode on for pennies on the dollar right now. So they're like, a Carnival has gotten rid of almost 60% of its fleet. And so times have changed. And next up are going to be airplanes. It's going to be the air industry. So these are opportunities when you see fit from a restaurant, anything that you want to do, teaching young men and women. What I plan to do is to show them that these opportunities are now out there. So having interviews with folks like yourself, who's who's had a prestigious career in one thing, and now you're going in other venues. Just folks in tech, folks in entertainment. This is something that I plan on doing here moving forward. Really big from a tech lens more so, with what I expose my audience to. So that's the first thing. In addition, just through work, we've launched Blue Kazi, like I told you. This is one of the biggest things that I've ever done up to this point in my life. But our focus will be to get folks into public service jobs. That's the difference. So Blue Kazi is the Indeed of public service jobs. That is what we've created, and that's what we're moving forward. And that's why I say it's the largest thing that I've done. When I assembled a dream team of guys and gals who know way more than me about pushing companies forward, and we've assembled a board, and we're going to move forward with that. So Hopefully you help a lot more people get jobs here real soon.
Joanna, I know you got to go, but what is your most persistent role of doing for others?
Well, first and foremost, I believe that to me personally, your success means absolutely nothing to me unless you are doing something to elevate other people. As a first generation college graduate, law graduate, and first in my family to do a lot of these things that I've been able to do, a lot of these doors that I've been able to walk into, I essentially didn't have any guidance from my family. But I'm very grateful that I attended historically Black colleges. I went to the great Bethune University for undergrad, and then I also went to Florida A&M University for my master's and went on to law school at IU and some other institutions. But I can tell you, it was mentors who mentored me. It was professors, it was the deans of my colleges who took me under their wing and showed me the way, who saw something much greater in me that I saw in myself, and help me with a roadmap, and also utilize their influence and sometimes affluence to ensure that I had the resources and I had access to the opportunities that I needed in order to thrive and to become who I am today. So I am enormously grateful to my professors and even the staff at both BCU and FAMU who really guided me. And to this day, they're still with me on the journey. I can call just about any one of my professors from either of those institutions, and they will come and they will help me and they will make the necessary phone calls, or they will guide me and tell me, take this route or that route. So for me, it is important to do that for others as well. I remember I have a mentor from Florida A&M University. She was extremely kind to me and very helpful. And every time she would do something for me, and I say, what can I do to repay you? She said, you don't have to do anything. The only thing that you must do is make sure when you get in a position of authority and once you rise and achieve a certain level of success, that you go on and do the same for other people. And that is how I live my life. At least I try to live my life. And I'm very intentional about it, utilizing the knowledge, the platform, and my connections to ensure that people in particular who look like me have access to opportunities and resources.
Very good. And Nicole Lester, what are you doing to help others?
Well, I think this, I'm echoing what everyone else is saying in a sense, but definitely my focus is media. Like I said early on the show, that it's my ministry, it's what I know how to do. And I'm using that particular platform where I've scaled my boutique publicity and media firm and actually collaborated with a bigger firm, the Black Ops production and distribution firm, so we can actually do this thing globally. And what I'm talking about doing is affecting media, the media that we need to see. So the diversity and inclusion, that part. We're coming to Hollywood and we're making some major changes because, you know, even as a mom and as a woman, I have a problem with certain things that are being, you know, the sexualization of cartoon characters and, you know, different things happening and being said in music, things that are, you know, our kids are exposed to even in something as little as a commercial on television, some kind of promotion. I think a lot of this stuff is just like not really good content. You know, the messaging is just all wrong. Even if it's not sexual, it's just not necessarily positive, and it doesn't represent us as human beings in the proper light. And we want to use media to actually do that. So put more of our faces, more of our narratives and our interests on television, but also clean up some of this stuff. So that's literally what we're doing, you know, domestically and abroad.
Very good. Very good. I want to thank all of you for talking about the leadership roles that we have to play. Keith Gray, Nicole Lester, Joanna LeBlanc, and Giovanna Hernandez Williams. Thank you all for this incredibly enlightening and informative and inspirational discussion on leadership. United we serve. Thank you again. God bless you.
Thank you.
God bless you too. Thank you.
God bless you.
We'll be back with my final word after this. I want to thank all of the guests who appeared on tonight's program, and I especially want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out to watch. I appreciate you. In closing, it was Chuck Swindoll who wrote this about leadership. He says, "We are all faced with a series of great opportunities brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. But through grace and justice and mercy, we can prove ourselves to be strong leaders." And that, my friends, hopefully will write us, ignite us, and unite us to keep spreading love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
The Love Train.
All aboard. The love train, the love train, the love train. If you don't feel the groove inside, give a
Come on, all aboard.
The love train, the love
Let me break it down for you like this.
The rhythm of love is easy to find if you're listening. The color of light isn't red, black, or white, but it's crimson. We all bleed the same. If you don't feel the groove, if you don't feel the groove, it's alright. Just give it time, give it time. Come on, y'all. Get on board. Mankind won't survive if our hearts beat inside a hateful rhythm. You see, love isn't bought, but comes with a price of forgiveness, and we all bleed the same. Yeah. If you don't feel it now, just wait. It's coming on, the love train. Just give it time, give it time. Get on board. Everyone's invited. That means you. We're all united. And you on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors. Brothers. All sisters and brothers. And sisters. On the love train. Get on board the love train. Everyone's invited. We're all united on the love train. Get on board. All creeds and colors, my sisters and brothers.